I'm going to introduce to the next panel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ramsey McGrory. I work at Mediaocean. I'll jump in here if you need help. 20 years ago, I sold the first DCPM programmatic campaigns with the right media. So listening to Travis, listening to Chris, two things struck me. One was amazing to see the development of programmatic and the new technologies become not just a channel, but the way to think about all of advertising. The second was that everything changes and nothing changes. And what I mean by that is the last 20 years has been a tremendous amount of transformation where they're talking about supply channels like social or CTV or technologies like cloud or AI. But the fundamentals of what the sellers are trying to do stay the same. They're creating content, they're distributing it, they're monetizing it, and they're measuring it. And that's the entire business model. And advertisers, 20 years ago, TV was a $65 billion space. This year, it's $200 billion. And while we have CTV and online video and social video and linear is still, 40, 50 billion, the fundamentals for the advertiser don't change, which is they need to reach audiences and they need to understand their reach and frequency against those audiences and measure. And so I thought Chris's presentation here was an unbelievable description of the complexity of the supply chain. And by the way, direct IO wasn't even part of that, but still represents the majority of how CTV is sold. So this panel is about a dirty word called frequency. So I'll invite Dan and Ziggy and Mike and Bo up to the stage to talk about how this is all going to be solved. With that.
Thank you very much, Ramsey. Appreciate the intro. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Meridian. I'm the SVP of Global Client Solutions at Innovid. As a part of that, I get to work with our clients, our agency partners, our tech partners, and the platforms that we've been talking about today to find solutions to some of the industry's meatiest challenges, of which, as Ramsey notes, frequency is a big part of that. We all know that advertising is getting the right ad in front of the right consumer at the right time, and that is a goal, and it's a necessity, of course, but when we get it wrong, there's waste. And when we get it wrong, it can create, I don't know if I'm allowed to say 4-letter words, a crap user experience.
Crap safe.
All right, crap is okay.
Yeah,
safe. Are we recording? But it can create a disjointed user experience, which is bad for all of us. So that's what we're here today. We're here to talk about one of the biggest yet most fixable challenges in our industry. What makes this panel unique is that we've got representation from everybody in the industry. We've got our agency partner friends, we've got tech platforms, we have media, Yahoo's DSP is here, and we have ad tech. So I think between the four of us, we can solve this thing. To get us kicked off today, let's do a quick round of intros so everybody can meet our fabulous panelists. And while you're introing yourself, tell us who you are and in one sentence what the biggest myth or misconception about frequency is.
Bo Ordeman, I lead the advanced TV business for the Yahoo DSP. And I think, hopefully this isn't controversial, but I think marketers still grossly underestimate the amount of their TV investment that is wasted due to overfrequency and how much they could derive their investment further by taking more active control over frequency management.
I agree. Hi, everybody. I'm Ziggy Zografakis. I can spell it for you later. I'm the head of data and measurement product partnerships at Roku. And I would say that one of the misconceptions is that it's not a solvable problem, right? I think we can solve for frequency, or we can get very close. And I think you have the right group of people to tackle that and to help us all push it forward and solve it together.
I thought we were here to talk about problems, not solutions, so I'm ill-prepared. Mike
We're
Wall,
solving.
I lead agency growth and channel partnerships at Goodway Group. Build on yours maybe a little bit, Bo, but misconception, you could go into a platform, set a frequency cap, and your job is over, and all things are solved.
What do we think? Yeah?
We're jazzed, I can tell. There's some energy.
Into it. So we all have that one commercial, I'm sure, that when we're streaming haunts us. If I asked everybody to raise their hand and tell us exactly what that commercial was, they probably could do it. And that might be their strategy. I don't know. I haven't had those conversations with them yet. But I think one of the things that we should set out to answer first is, why is frequency such a big challenge in the CTV space?
Yeah, so it's Burger King that haunts me. Man, I get crushed by that ad when I come to New York specifically. But
You rule.
look, I think that the majority of the frequency issue is really driven by the silos that are inherent in the way TV is bought. And that kind of leads to a fragmentation, a fragmented frequency implementation. And that's not an easy problem to solve. If you think about video investment teams that are buying the upfronts, are they coordinating that activation with scatter and performance and programmatic? Are national buys being coordinated with local buys? Those are typically different teams. They may even be different agencies that are buying them. There's still a tremendous amount of TV bought on a direct IO basis where you can manage frequency within a publisher, but not across publishers. And that's not even to mention linear TV, which is still 2/3 of TV investment. It'll still be over 60% this year. So it's not an insignificant problem to challenge, but a lot of it is in the silos.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree. I mean, I think we talk about fragmented attention, and that fragmentation comes from so many different things, right? Whether it's fragmentation of channel, fragmentation of platform, right? Linear versus CTV. One of the interesting things being at Roku is how we see, into all those different components of it, right? And I think what we're trying to do is turn that fragmented attention into intention, right? And make sure that we're focusing on the user experience so that it's not a crap user experience, but really trying to bring, at least from our perspective, and as the #1 streaming platform, we see a lot of data, and we see a lot of that consumption, is to try and bring that these days into the market and sort of try and help solve that problem from our perspective as much as we can. And I think, but that's where it comes from, right? There's all these different players, and as CTV, grows up, right? I think it'd be interesting to find out if we did a survey, what inning you think we're in, right? Because I always find that to be a very interesting and telling statistic. But it's similar to all the different other channels that have grown up, right? Like mobile, digital, they go through the same thing of fragmentation, and then you get to this point where you try and solve a problem collectively as an industry. So I think that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, and I only caught a portion of Chris's session, and if you look at it without optimizing it, there could be hundreds of ways to buy a single type of impression. And even if you're smart about it and do all the work, there's still a lot of different ecosystems you need to buy within to have a complete picture of your video strategy. And each of those ecosystems can have different identity signals that don't talk to each other or inconsistent. So I think as a buyer trying to make sure you're all the right places in the most efficient way, your different ecosystems are talking to each other, aligning with an overarching frequency goal, it takes some work. It takes some work.
So fragmentation is one of the key challenges that we're facing to better tackling the issue of frequency. I think is sort of collectively what we're all saying. And I don't think it's a very hard thing to do to ask yourselves the same question, like, how do you watch TV? For my 94-year-old grandfather, that's in his recliner and it's Fox News. For my 26-year-old daughter, it's in bed on my laptop. This is the experience that we're all streaming with today. And if that's the challenge, something that we are here to talk about solutions to some extent, and in partnership with the buyers that we work with and the platforms that we get to work with. As an ad server, we see everything. So we get to deliver the impression to all of these different devices, all of these different users, all of these different platforms on behalf of the brands and agencies that we work with. And I think there's an interest by all of us to kind of solve for that. So I'd like to let Ziggy and Bo kind of talk a little bit about the frequency management solution and how that's been brought to life recently for some of the customers that we work with.
You want me to tee it up?
Yeah, go
Let's
for
do
it.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, either way. So it's a great question, and it kind of aims towards some of the partnerships that we've started entering the market, we made an announcement around something called the Roku Data Cloud. At the end of the day, what that is an opportunity for us to bring a lot of the signals, right? Whether that's identity, we have a lot of ACR signals that crosses over linear and our CTV presence as well. And so the Roku Data Cloud is really the concept of bringing that to the market and inking partnerships with the likes of Innovid and iSpot and Yahoo to bring our identity to help some of these issues, right? And I'll pass it over to Bo to talk a little bit about the Yahoo partnership in particular, but that identity and that data asset and what we bring from the lens of where we sit is really key as we view it to helping solve this across the entire industry. And if you want to talk about the Yahoo portion.
Yeah. Well, I'll second what Mike said. To think that you can kind of come in and set your frequency in one platform is, historically that's not going to solve it for you, right? There's this concept of global frequency. There's a lot happening outside of a DSP that it needs signal to understand. And by the way, just going back, I mentioned there's a lot of siloed activation of TV, and it is a hard problem to solve, but we can absolutely do it. The two primary blind spots that we need to solve for as DSPs, one is linear TV, right? And that's where partnerships like what Roku's doing with the Roku Data Cloud Collaboration Suite as the #1 selling TV OS in the US. That's huge. If platforms can tap into that ACR data and drive incremental reach to linear, that's a big win for marketers. By the way, platforms also need to partner with as many TV data providers as they can to get as big a swath of linear TV data to drive to incremental reach. And then two, another blind spot is what happens outside of our DSP in digital. So direct IO buys and buys that are happening in other platforms. And that's where Innovid has, Dan's being modest, he didn't mention it yet, but Innovid launched Harmony Frequency last year, which Innovid as an ad server sees, for a significant portion of major advertisers in TV sees all of that activity across IO, DSP, and they can pump that data into a platform and have the platform optimize off of it.
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of the way players, and maybe not everybody, are starting to work together in the last 14 months has changed a lot. And I feel like there's two buckets to solving it. It's what can you consolidate and work under one roof? And I feel like Roku's taken some really big steps in terms of making the Roku ID more available and targeting in different platforms. But then also collaboration. And I think Innovid, for example, has been able to give us as buyers insight into things outside of biddable ecosystems to inform the decisions we make in biddable ecosystems. So consolidation and collaboration, that would be my two C's.
Yeah, and so just like a little bit about the overall solution. So as Bo mentioned, we're taking exposure data from places that live outside of these ecosystems. When we're working with a brand as an ad server in CTV, we're delivering every impression for them. And what we're able to do then is build audiences that are consumable by platforms that were built on that kind of technology. And either homes that have been exposed, we create a suppression group for them so that they're no longer overexposed to that. I don't know who, this is an anonymous question that just came in, but I don't know who is seeing that same insurance ad. But ideally, you don't see that same insurance ad over and over again. And then also, but it's the other side, right? It's not about just limiting exposure. It's also about optimizing exposure and bringing, so, Mike, I'd like you to kind of touch on this, but can you give any examples of when frequency improves performance rather than looking at it as cutting waste?
Yeah, because I think a lot of the conversation, and I feel like all of us have either the individual experience of this or friends that blame you because you're in the advertising industry for causing this problem. So over-frequency is what we talk about a lot, and it is a problem, and there's a lot of efficiency in reinvesting it. But we spend a lot of time looking at conversion rates over different frequency amounts, and conversion rates go up after 0, 1, 2, 3. It's not forever. So I think there is a sweet spot, and I think the panel name has the word balance in it. So I think there is an optimal balance per client. So we see that in the data time and time again, that going from 0, 1 to 2 typically has a lift in conversion. So it's not just trimming on the top. It's actually getting in front of someone multiple times, because we all know we're in a multi-screen universe and ecosystem. So the fact that something comes up on your TV screen once and you remember it and you're entrenched with it, that's a tall task of a consumer in today's day and age. So it does take multiple variations sometimes to make an impact.
You know, collaboration is something that we've spoken a lot about on the panel today, and I'd like to ask a couple closing questions of everybody. The first is, what advancements in technology or collaboration will make frequency management even better in the years to come? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in. First, I want to say, if we solve that problem about the insurance ad, how are we going to remember the jingle after we watch the ad? I'm not going to say which one. In any case.
And which jingle is it?
Which
'Cause
jingle?
we know
I can't say. There might be advertisers here. You
column.
can't say. I don't know. I think the advancements in technology, look, I think what we've talked about is incremental progress, right? And the way that I view it, and this is particularly from a partnerships lens, it's really a tapestry, right? So we provide our signals to, Innovid, to Yahoo, whatever the case may be, and we're creating solutions for the industry that we can then bring selfishly into Roku for our experience, so for the Roku experience, because there are different, when we talk about CTV, this is something I mentioned earlier, it's also the platform, right? So it's not just video, it's the entire ecosystem, the entire experience when you turn on your Roku and you enter that. And I think that's really important, because frequency isn't just about one specific thing, it's about the objective that you're trying to accomplish and making sure that the frequency of all of the things that you're bringing together work in concert, right? Like that would be the best thing. So depending on where you are in the funnel, you hit the ad so that they remember the jingle and increase your brand lift, and then eventually you have a call to action within a video ad, right? Like that's the holy grail as far as I'm concerned. So I think that technological advancement is continuing to push forward. I'll say this, and it opens up a can of worms that we won't get into, but in a privacy-safe manner, that is a thing that hangs over the industry, right? And it's like that technology, right? The privacy-enhancing technologies that we've been working on, that others have been working on, frankly, are what allow these partnerships to blossom and to grow, so that we can bring this stuff together as an ecosystem and create a better experience for everybody as we're going forward.
I'll just jump in just to contextualize like the extent of the problem, and this is some data that we looked at with Innovid at an aggregated level across some big advertisers. We looked at the percentage of households that were over their desired frequency threshold for it was a bunch of big advertisers together, and it was only 8 to 15% of households that were over that desired frequency. And on the surface, we said, well, that's actually not a really big deal. That's actually pretty good, right? But we dug deeper, it was between 42 and 60% of the impressions were going to that 8 to 15% of households. That's 42 to 60% of your TV investment that is effectively wasted, could have gone to reaching new households, could have gone to building frequency. So implementation of solutions like Innovid Harmony Frequency, linear TV data is going to, by default, drive up audiences to optimal frequency and drive that investment a lot further.
And this may be a question for you, Bo, because I feel like seeing the same thing where it may not seem like a lot, but it ends up being a lot of impressions. But we found that typically that's also in very specific pockets. So it's not like 100 culprits of driving that.
Right.
Like, where have you found those pockets? Not to go off script here, but I'm
yeah, I mean, look, it can be an individual publisher contributing. And so we used to look at average frequency. So let's say, hey, my quarterly frequency target is 30, right? And we'd see, okay, you came in at 20. You're well under your frequency target. Then we looked at household frequency buckets, and you say, okay, cool. Well, I have a large amount is happening within my frequency bucket, but then I've got these other households that represent 70% of my impressions that are completely over frequency. So being able to look in to a more granular cut of the frequency is really important. Don't just get fooled by average frequencies.
And if you're seeing those really high impression loads with that handful of publishers, an even scarier view is the sort of overlapping frequency behind two of them. Because again, how do you watch TV? You're not just streaming on one platform. You're not just streaming on one service. You're streaming across several services. And so, very likely it's 2 or 3 of the combined group there. So overlapping frequency can be an even bigger place to identify optimization. We've got 1 minute and 30 seconds left on stage. So what's one piece of advice that you'd give advertisers when it comes to frequency?
I'd say, as a marketer, understand the silos within where your TV is bought and just iterate and coordinate them closer together. There's some brands that are absolutely doing this already. It's absolutely doable.
Yeah, I would say ask questions, right? But that only works when you kind of understand the objective that you're trying to go for, right? So understand where you are in the funnel, where you're aiming your marketing dollars and what you're trying to achieve, and then ask those questions of the platforms and the companies that you work with, how they're managing it and what tools they have, because you really need to marry the objective with the questions and the education as to what's available to you, rather than just saying 5, right? Like rather than just throwing a number out, you really need to dig a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah, and I maybe build on what we were talking about, Bo. Like I think any buy, even if it's well thought out and very intentional, will have a level of waste in it. So I think find your bottom 10% and reinvest it. And that could be a publisher, a site, a format. So look for that bottom 10% and reinvest it.
All right, that's our time. Thank you to our panelists, Bo, Mike, Ziggy. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having us.
Nice work.